Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like The Upshot with Jack and Zach. It's a podcast about the scandalous antics of the biggest names in sport. From David Beckham's stag do of the century to the real reason Chelsea sacked Thomas Tuchel. This summer, we'll be in the USA, unearthing all the funniest stories from the biggest tournament in sport. Search The Upshot wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like Under the Cosh with me.
And me, Chris Brown. And me, John Barkin.
Do I not get my name?
Not important, irrelevant.
Well, join us each week when we have a different character from the world of football.
Imagine sat in your local pub, you've got your favourite player, and he's telling you the nitty-gritty. From modern day to the good old days, we've got it all.
And I don't know if you know, there's a bit of a tournament going on this summer. We've got some extra bonus
Materials.
material. I like that word. Better than content.
Search Under the Cosh and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like Libero, a podcast about football, the most important of the least important things. I'm Rory Smith, and twice a week, along with 6 of the country's leading football journalists, we take you inside the game's biggest stories and discuss the most pressing issues facing the Premier League, the Champions League, and pretty much everything else. Join us as the season reaches its conclusion and we prepare for a massive summer of international football. Just search Libero wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to Haway The Podcast. It's Martin here and you are joining us for another Q&A episode. As you might expect, there are tons of questions, loads of things to talk about, and I've got a couple of gentlemen here who hopefully will have an answer or two between them. So first of all, we'll say good morning to Ant. Hello, Ant.
Hello, mate. Yeah, good. How are you? Are you all right?
I am, well, apart from the results on Saturday, I am very good, mate, but there's lots of things to talk about, isn't there? And it's that funny thing, isn't it? When things are going well, sometimes there isn't that much to talk about. When one or two things go against you, all sorts of topics of conversations get raised, and some of them are pretty legitimate, others are not be as legitimate as other things, but it's just par for the course, isn't it? When you get a negative result or two, as we've had over the past 10 days, then there's lots of questions start getting asked.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just because of as well that the football hasn't been great lately either is why a few questions get answered. But you're right though, it does go from like the sublime to the ridiculous, doesn't it? In terms of people's reactions, but it is what it is. I'm afraid it's I guess I'm not slightly worse. I think you looked at the results yesterday. All the other teams who were like down there at the bottom haven't won. And so we're just that extra gap now. And I'm like 11 points clear of relegation with 8 games left. We're not going to get dragged into it. So it's just hopefully now from now to the end of the season, we just see a little bit of improvement with the performances, but also, we've got so many injuries that it's hard to get that, base 11, get a base 11 down, but it'll come. We'll be fine.
Everything will be fine is the mantra, I think, today. But we've also got Andrew joining myself and Ant. Morning, Andrew.
Good morning. Are you well?
I am good, mate. Yes, all good here. Thank you very much. And it's that sort of dose of nerves that now started to build up ahead of the game at the weekend, isn't it?
Well, I mean, before you hit record, you were already accused of doing a Thomas Frank and drinking from a Newcastle mug. So everybody's on high alert, and everybody's looking for any signs of people being secret mags.
I'm going to great lengths to hide my secret magdom, if that's the case. But
Yeah.
I will reassure listeners that was a mug that's got all of the Bruce Springsteen albums lined up vertically, and a couple of them look like black and white, and did do a double take and had to question my loyalties there for a
Oh,
split
no, I'll never
second.
question your loyalty, man. I'll never question your loyalty. And to be fair, he brought the mug quite close to the camera, and it's a superb mug, so we'll let him off.
It's a exceptionally good mug. It's one of those mugs that I found and I dropped loads of hints about in the run up to Christmas, and Santa Claus came good. So there you go.
Oh, excellent. Well done, Santa.
Right, we are going to kick off our Q&A today with with a good question from Joe, who's emailed in. And obviously, if you want to email your questions to Haway The Podcast, safc@gmail.com. If you're not on social media, then please do so. And Joe asks a question that I think it's a really big talking point at the minute, and it might have some simple answers and it might have some more complex answers. Joe's question is this: why have the fans started to turn on the manager and the players in the second half of the season compared to the first half, when we all knew as a fan base the target was to reach 40 points and survive? For the first half of the season, we all got behind the team, and the fans were one of the reasons why we got the wins, last-minute goals and great comebacks. However, over recent weeks, why have the fans decided to turn? We've seen racial abuse, and I think it's probably good to point out at that point that the racial abuse to Romain Mundle was on social media, and it's kind of been linked to some overseas stuff, hasn't it? So it's not necessarily fans in the ground. But we've seen fans leaving early, uncalled for abuse to the players and the manager. Why have the fans started turning the manager and the players in the second half of the season? And there's a lot to pull out of that, isn't there, Ant? And it's like, it's a really difficult one to put your finger on. I actually don't think there's a simple answer to it. And you've got this whole notion of the club coming up and that buoyancy and enthusiasm at the start of the season, which was really harnessed, wasn't it? And we got on a good run. Is it that novelty of being in the Premier League's worn off, and we've become a little bit, I don't know, expectant with some of the games that we've had recently? Is it a consequence of performances on the pitch? Because, the players, as you say, we've had so many injuries. We're almost playing it's certainly not playing the first choice 11 if everybody was fit, so you've got that to contend with. But, the fans leaving early, when a few months ago we were staying till the end. Till the end was the whole mantra of the club for a while, and we were getting last-minute winners and all that sort of stuff. So what's your take, and on some of the bits that's been raised there?
You're right. It's a really difficult one to break down, because it seems to have come very, very quickly. Like, as from Fulham onwards, I would say, like, where everything has gone a little bit sour. And, I don't know why. I can see, yes, the football at the minute's not brilliant. But it's like what we're expecting now. Every team this season's gone on a little bit of a slump. And yes, we're in one. We're in a bit of a difficult time at the minute. Let's not pull any strings. We are struggling to get goals in. We're struggling to create much. But on the other flip side of that, we've had pretty much 2 months without our best player in Jagger. He's obviously, and he's still managing. You can tell he's still managing his minutes, because he's he does look as if he's played a lot of football, which he has. So about that, we've had Mukiele out for a little while, who's been unbelievable. Give us so much, attack wise as well at right back. And we haven't. It's probably because he hasn't been able to put his first team 11 out. His favourite 11. Sorry. I mean, on Saturday you thought, oh, we're finally getting some players back, and then Angulo and Lafayette go down, and obviously Lafayette isn't too serious, but Angulo's out for 4 to 6 weeks, and it's like every time you say, oh, I've got some players back ready to go now, another 2 go down, and then on Saturday when Ballard went down, and you're like, oh, what's going on now? Now we're probably could have maybe without him for the derby, but we might have Mukiele back, and yeah, I feel a bit sorry for him. I've got to be honest. I do feel a bit sorry for him, because we have had a run off in form, which we were expecting, weren't we? We were expecting that. But we've also had a run off where he's not been able to put down these players, which I'm sure he wants to put down. But I think with the fans, and I think it is, I think it probably is, what we're seeing at the moment isn't brilliant. The fact we haven't scored from open play for God knows how long. And yeah, there has been a little drop off in form, isn't there? But you've just got to, and I've always been bigger picture, and people might have a pop on me on Twitter, and I already have had a pop on me on Twitter, and I don't really care, but saying it's poor mentality. But I've said from the start of the season, give me 40 points. We've got 40 points. You know what I mean? I don't think we're going to get relegated. I certainly don't think, and I've said this, we needed to keep a level head about European football. I certainly don't think we're ready for it. And the problem being is, had we got that next year, I think we would have struggled. And I think what they've got to do in the summer is, they are going to bring players in, of course they are. You heard Sholfi on Saturday saying that he wants to win the league. So, they obviously are going to bring players in. And they've just got to, bring in the right ones, for where, we all know where we need players, you know what I mean? We just bring them in, and I think we'll be, like, again, same before, I think we'll be fine. And I think for anyone who is worrying, and again, I might get big pelters for this, just think about where we were, you know what I mean? And how easy it could be to get back down there. So, and I think we've still had a great season, mate. And I think the stuff towards Regis, I think we'll get into it a little bit further. I'm sure.
We've got a number of questions on.
Yes, because I have got a couple of thoughts on it, but I'll let Andrew speak because he's been a bit quiet.
Well, I want to come to Andrew about this because, look, you two are both season card holders. You go at the stadium like every week. Before I moved out here, I had a season ticket for 25 or so years. And support to me is a two-way street. It can't just be a reaction to good performances on the field. As supporters, our role is twofold, right? It's to support when things are going well, but also probably more critically to support when things aren't going so well, right? So, and look, this is looking at it as an idealistic way, Andrew, right? But at the start of the season, there was such a connection between the crowd in the ground and the players on the field. You could see it, and you could hear it, and you could feel it, right? Yes, we've had some injuries, right? We've had some younger players having to come in, players who maybe aren't ready to play a full season of Premier League football, if we're going to be brutally honest about some of them. But they've had to come in and fill gaps and plug holes when we've got the better players, more experienced players out injured. So surely that situation, if you're going to look at it in a bit of an abstract way, if they're there trying the hardest, put the Port Vale game to one side, I don't think you could accuse any game this season of the players not trying the hardest. Surely the group of players now needs more support than we did at the start of the season, because it's a younger group, players getting put into a situation where they're not necessarily completely ready for it. And surely that's got to work both ways. We've got to support in the slightly bad times. I'm not going to say bad times because it was mid-table in the bloody Premier League. But that support's surely got to pick the players up when they're not performing 100%. And I know it's probably an idealistic way to look at things, but my heart just sinks when you see on Saturday people streaming out with 15 minutes left when we're just looking for 5-0 down. I get it, right? 1-0 down, and yes, we haven't been peppering the goal with shots from here, there, and everywhere, but there's always a chance. There's always a chance. And we've got a far better chance of turning that game around on Saturday if everyone's in the seat and having a bit of a roar and getting behind the team. And I'm really conscious of what I say because I'm not at the game, and everyone knows I'm sat here on the other side of the world at 2:00 in the morning watching it on my stream. But is there a solution? What can the club do? I think is probably the question out of that to get that going again.
It's a really complex issue, and I'm not sure. Excuse me. I'm not sure if I do know the answers as to how you fix it. Importantly, Martin, I genuinely don't think just because somebody's based away from the area or whatever, I think you're perfectly entitled to your opinion for a start. There's no rule you have to be born within X amount of miles of the Stadium of Light, or you have to live within X amount of miles, or you have to attend a certain percentage of games. We're all Sunderland fans. We've all got a justifiable reason to want the atmosphere to be good. And as well, if you're going to get pelters online, mate, people can direct them at me as well, because I'm standing with you on this. I'm actually quite tired of the behaviour of some people, and I will stress some people, some fans, not everybody. There's still tens of thousands who understand the situation we're in with injuries, understand the fact that we were always going to have it tough in the Premier League this year. It is only certain groups of fans doing it, but Martin, I can tell in your voice that you're perplexed by it, and so am I. we've always had this reputation of kind of being up and down as fans, and when the fans are behind the team, it's brilliant. But players have said in the past that, you know, it can go the other way, and it actually becomes a problem. It can be an issue when you're in a stadium and there's a lot of negative feeling that transmits to the players, and I'd rather those people who were being like that, creating that type of bad vibe, weren't even there. Because I'm here to support the team. Whilst I'm saying this has happened before, and the fans have been boom and bust. And again, I say some of the fans, not all the fans. It has surprised me the speed at which this has happened. We are so much further forward as a club than we wanted. This isn't a time to be going on the way some people are. I think I heard, I didn't check this out, so if this isn't correct, I apologise. But I think I heard at the weekend that it was something like the 5th anniversary of us winning the Papa John's. At,
it was.
Yeah,
It was,
a behind closed doors Wembley. Now, that is within living memory. Just look at how far the club has come on and off the pitch since then. We are doing great. Everybody at the club deserves our support at the moment. I get I will always say the caveats about particularly early leavers. Some people might have a genuine reason to leave early. No problem. I also get people pay their money. They have they have a right to decide how they behave. I get that. But from my point of view, there's a lot of people at the moment who are going on like bands. There's a lot of people who, I'm sorry, they're just being spanks. They're just being absolute weapons, the way they're going on. Some of the language being used to describe individuals coming from the mouths of supposed Sunderland fans is not good enough. And whilst the majority of us are still behind the team, I think it's fair that the majority of us also start to question some of the way certain people are going on, because it's not on. It's not what Sunderland fans are supposed to be. I mean, I had to laugh at full time. Went to the loos. I'm washing my hands, and on the mirrors they've got these stickers connected to the season ticket renewal campaign. I don't know if you spotted them, Ant, but it's the tagline's something like, They come here prepared to face 11 men, but they can't prepare to face you. Well, some of the fans at the moment are actually helping the away teams. They're helping the opposition, and I'm not impressed.
It's interesting to follow on from that, Andrew. Joe, who asked the original question, had also shared with us that he's season ticket holder in the southeast corner. On Saturday, the bloke behind me with a strong, loud Cockney accent, he has it in brackets, decided to give Luke O'Nien so much abuse when he came on. He was coming out saying and shouting things like, "You're a wanker, you're a tool, you're a waste of a shirt, useless, should never play again in the Sunderland shirt," all this sort of stuff. And look, that's an isolated incident. It's one person in 47,500, whatever the crowd was on Saturday. But he asks, why does certain fans think it's acceptable to give this sort of abuse? What can we do as a fan base to make the stadium like more positive again? And, you can get criticism, can't you, and we've had it. We've seen periods of time before when the team hasn't been given 100%. You've had a bunch of players out there who could not look as if they'd rather be further away from the stadium light than actually playing at the stadium light. We've had periods of time where the ownership's been not great, and there's been problems with that you can get rightly pissed off about. But at present, I cannot remember the club being in such a good state. And this team, who tries its heart out every single week, needs a bit of help now. And we should be doing that. And, if you've got somebody shouting at Luke O'Nien, calling him a wanker, saying you shouldn't play him with Sun, I know, again, it's an isolated incident. 99% of people who go will want to support the team. But it's just such a frustrating thing where this is one of the things in football that's in our control. There's very few things in football that are in our control. This is, and we can make an impact. We can have a positive impression, an impact. And look, it goes beyond the ground, right? It goes how we have conversations like this. It goes into how we talk about things on social media, on the Roker Report website. All of this combines to create the feeling around the club. And when there's so much positive happening on and off the field at the club at the minute, I say it's never been in a better state as far as I'm concerned as it is now. It deserves support.
I mean, it does. It does deserve support. And that particular Luke O'Nien incident, he's none of those things. He's not a wanker. He's none of those. I forgot the exact terminology used. But even if he was, when he's coming onto the pitch, how's that going to help anybody? How is having a pop at somebody in a red and white shirt going to help the rest of the people in the red and white shirts perform? It's bizarre. Be warned here, because here comes a Yadar sentence. But back in the day, in the Fulwell end, on the terraces, if somebody went on one like that and made individual comments about a Sunderland player that weren't justified and weren't about this football, somebody would turn around and tell you to F off. I clearly remember that. I clearly remember one of my friends being told to shut his mouth because he was just on a rant. And the general feeling around there, people were like backing the person telling you to stop your gums flapping. Society in general, it happens loads now. It's just society and attitudes have changed, and it's much more acceptable now to be unnecessarily unpleasant and unnecessarily rude. But yeah, I still do think that the majority of Sunderland fans get the situation, appreciate where we are. They're there to back the team. And the more people calling it out, the more people asking questions and that, good on yous, because no club needs this kind of carry on, but Sunderland particularly at the moment don't need this carry on because it's good. And I hope it isn't spoilt by the behaviour of the mindless section of support.
The other thing you've got to consider, Ant, right, is at this point of the season where we, what was 6 or 7 or 8 weeks away from the end of the season, the club are going to be having talks with players for the summer. They'll be in talks with players for the summer. They've got agents probably coming to the stadium. Might be players coming to the stadium to have a look around and see what's going on, and see if they like what they see on the field and like the vibe in the stadium. It's not going to be very attractive, is it, to prospective signings, agents, all that sort of thing, if they turn up and see a part of a crowd that's that bit edgy and isn't supporting the players as well as it might do.
No, 100%. And you know what? Like that one you just read out, that statement you just read out, really, really shocked us. Like, it's like you shouldn't be having to go at any player like that. You know, when they're coming onto the pitch, but like, how dare you say that about Luke O'Nien? Like, you know, the fact that he's not fit to wear the shirt, all this palaver. Now you might have them thoughts in your head that he's not a Premier League footballer and everything like that. And I think he knows that he's not in our best 11 when everyone's fit. But what he's done for this club and what he's been through with this club as well, I think that lad needs to, give his head a major wobble, to be totally honest with you. And maybe not bother coming back. Try and find another sport, mate, because I don't think football's for you. But that we'll not waste our breath on that. But you're right. And, you've got to remember as well, as much as we are thinking we are safe, which we think we are, but our next 2 home games are Tottenham and Forest, who are fighting for their lives down there. And you looked at look at Spurs yesterday, actually showed a bit of grit for the first time in a long time, and I think they've kind of like got to think of, hang on, we're in the shit here, like, and Forest as well, who are going to be difficult on the dice. It's going to be that's not going to be a very attractive game of football. That and what we need to do is pick up some.
You're behind the times, and you're behind the time.
Is he sugar?
They're on to the 6th man. He'll probably be back by the time we publish this in the morning.
I was just going to say, he's not behind the times. He's actually ahead of what's going to happen this week. Though with Forest.
It's Pereira, isn't it? No, I forgot about that. Hopefully we've got an edit, but honestly, now they've got Victor Pereira, isn't it now? But it's not going to be an attractive game, that, So and that's a game where you're going to be looking at Friday night. It's going to be on the telly under the lights and all that. And that, for me, stadium light under the lights is where we get our, where we do get some really, really good atmospheres. We've had that this year. The Man City game springs to mind, where the fans were 100% behind the players, and we've got to think, arrest this home form, get a couple of results, and these are winnable games. Them two games are winnable games. You look at next week as well. Look who we've got the big game, and we cannot be going in with this defeatist attitude. I've seen online, they're going to put 5 past us. They're kind of, let's send me another 5-1, right? You know what I mean? It's like, all right, let's not bother showing up then. But we have just, like I say, we've just got to remember. I've said this, we're even going back to City, which was 2 months ago. The atmosphere was absolutely brilliant. One of the best atmospheres I've seen at the stadium. Like, everyone was every tackle was getting cheered for and stuff like that. You just got to remember, and I think you mentioned it before, you're with them in the good times. But when the bad times are happening, and I wouldn't even call it a bad time, it's just a run-off.
It's not, is it?
It's just a bad patch of form, which makes it a bit more worrying why it's all happening. Like, but you just got to remember, they need us now. We need to get behind them now, starting with, Sunday with a huge game against Newcastle. We need to go there, all guns blazing, you know what I mean? Because we're going to get it. We're going to get it back, because they're going to be right up for it. We need to be right up for it as well.
I think it's just worth reiterating. I think all of us are of the same opinion. It's absolutely not everyone. It's a small, very small percentage, and we just need to all get back onto that same page and get that support really going because when it's good, it's brilliant. When it's good, it's brilliant. And, as you said, Andrew, like former players talk about that, don't they? Say, when things are going well, it's a great place to play. When things aren't going quite so well, it's not as enjoyable. And we just need to harness that good.
Exactly. Because, that's a good way of putting it. Harness that good. Because Sunderland fans at their best can be a real advantage. It can make the team get better results. It's that simple. I'm in complete agreement about what you're saying, gents. I also just think it's important to say, nobody here is saying that you can't criticise the club or criticise the players.
Absolutely
not. Nobody here is like some sort of club stooge trying to defend anybody. There is no problem with genuine critique done in the right way. If after the game, if you sat with your mates having a beer or having a bite to eat and you think so-and-so wasn't good or whatever, by all means, express that in the right way. It's the almost hatred coming out of some people's mouths, and the aggression and the unpleasantness that is aimed at individuals, and almost comments about them as people rather than as footballers. And sorry, it sounds like I'm telling people what to do or how to behave. Everybody is entitled to an opinion, and listen, do what you want, behave how you want, but there's plenty of people who are behaving now in a way that's making me think you're a prick, basically.
Just to come back on that as well, Martin, regarding, you said it's like the 99%, and I do think you're right there, because, Leeds, a couple of weeks ago, I went down to Leeds, and from the first minute to the 90th, when 112th, because there was that much time added on, the fans were absolutely unreal. One of the best away games I've been to for atmosphere. It was like being in a home match. It was absolutely brilliant. You know what I mean? And the Leeds fans were great as well. And they were, it was such a good atmosphere. I mean, the game itself was not much to write home about. You know what I mean? We got the 3 points and stuff, but the celebrations afterwards and everything like that it was brilliant. So it is there. It is there. You know what I mean? And they said those away fans, and we took a fair few down, were incredible. So, I'm not just having a go at the fans in general, because I think you're right. I think it is just the odd 1%. And it is, I think it's just entitlement now. It's just entitlement that they've seen us being, really, really good at the start of the season. They've seen this, intensity and everything like that, which is a little bit dropped off, because, I mean, sorry to announce it to people, players do get tired. Players do get injured, and it does happen. It's football. You look at, again, going back to Spurs, they've got 13 players out injured. It does happen, and it is expected to see. And you've got lads who've played a lot of football this year who you can tell are tired or carrying knocks and stuff, but are playing because it's a necessity for them to be in the team. So, but yeah, it is there. You like to see the Leeds game was phenomenal. So just to because it has been a bit negative so far. But just to say, like I say, that Leeds game and where I went, it's unbelievable. So it is there. And I mentioned the City one before. So we're capable of it. We just need it for the last few games. We really do. We've got four home games left, I think. And we do need to, really, really get, especially the next 2 games, because they are winnable ones. And that, we can put nails in coffins, down there, and ensure that we can go as high in the table as we can.
That is a very good place for us to take a short break. We'll be back after a couple of ads.
Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like us, Ali, George and Dave from the England Pod.
We're all England all the time. We'll be out in North America covering a huge summer of football for Thomas Tuchel's side.
The potential for glory for England is so overwhelming that I feel physically sick just thinking about it. And I'm probably not the only one, but the potential for another glorious failure, well, that's pretty potent too. We will be daily throughout the tournament. Just search The England Pod and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Find the biggest voices in sport on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like football cliches with me, Adam Hurrey, Charlie Eccleshare and David Walker. Almost certainly the greatest alternative football podcast in existence. It's going to be a long, hot summer of football and we'll make sense of all the tiny things you didn't think you cared about, but trust me, you do. Search football cliches and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Haway The Podcast for the second part of our Q&A today. Now, Ant, you alluded to this earlier, Regis Le Bris. Now, we have got a number of questions all about Regis Le Bris. So I'm going to read the questions out and then we can have a bit of a chat about the general topic. So Joel Lewins on X said, the ridiculous clamour to remove Regis Le Bris is beyond me. Has been severely restricted in selections in the last 3 games. We've still got 4 points. He surely has enough credit to go again with new additions next season. Do you agree he's fully deserved another season? Casual tweeter at Day-to-Day Guy says, I like Regis, but seeing fans turning, the question is, how long does he get, given he's secured promotion, got us 40 points? Sunderland Till I Die says, how many SAFC fans need to give their heads a wobble? He's stealing your phrase there, Aaron. Our squad was worth £18 million last year. We've secured safety in record time, had the longest home undefeated record, and played some fantastic football. Plastic fans having a meltdown on Twitter and calling for Regis's head. Seriously? Paul Rackstraw says, at the beginning of August, almost every Sunderland fan would have been happy with 17th position. Why all of a sudden certain sections calling for the manager's head? Also, is this a true reflection of the fan base, or is it indicative of the cesspit that X has become? That's another conversation, I think, but probably the latter, I would say, but we'll come on to that. At Marley Hannon says, is Regis's time in Sunderland coming to an end? Do you think once the season is over, the club will be looking at changing head coach as a means of progression? He's done a fantastic job, but doubts over if he can improve us any further. And Roy of the Rokers says, given our injury list and having just taken 4 points from Bournemouth and Leeds, it's a tad unfair to be calling for Regis Le Bris to go. Surely the plan was promotion, safety and kick on. He's ahead of schedule. Behind that plan, there might be a succession plan. 2, to bring Xhaka into the frame. So this is a conversation that needs to be had, I think, in terms of Regis Le Bris, because again, just as we've been surprised at how the criticism of the teams accelerated over the past few weeks, the criticism of Regis Le Bris has really accelerated over the past few weeks. It's always been almost waiting to happen. As you saw last season when we went on that run before the playoffs and people going, we need to sack him and get in a manager like Tony Mowbray for the playoffs because he's won the playoffs before. Regis Le Bris can't motivate them. And it's just such a reactive thing to results. Now, my view on this, and I'll bring the two of you in a second, is that if you're looking at should Regis Le Bris be replaced because of performances and results, then absolutely not. It's nuts. We've had so many injuries. We're still actually, I think the last 10 games we picked up 11 points, or last 11 we picked up 10. So you're still going at a point a game, which would pretty much keep you up the vast majority of the season. So it's not as if we're in dire form anyway in terms of point collection. But there's naturally going to be conversation about Le Bris, and we've seen the club aren't afraid to make a change, Andrew, if they can improve or they think they can improve. So there's two very distinct elements to this conversation. One is about Le Bris's performance now, what he's done this season, how he's managing the club at present. And look, I think we can all agree that we'd love to see more attacking play. We'd love to see more shots on target. We'd love to see more goals from open play. You know, there's questions further down the track that we'll come on to probably in part 2 that we'll put out tomorrow about set pieces. You know, we're not defending or creating things from set pieces as much as we like. But in terms of Le Bris's job that he's doing at present, from a footballing perspective, is there enough there to warrant any sort of conversation about his future, purely looking at performances and results?
I don't believe there is enough there to be questioning him and being critical of him. He's the man who got a squad who'd finished 16th in the championship to a man who's got the squad. What are we? Are we 13th now?
13th at the time of recording.
And touching distance of a lot of the teams above. You make a good point there, Martin. I do think it is important that we recognise that this isn't a black and white issue. Le Bris may well go at some point, but not necessarily because the club have looked at recent results and thought, oh, he's struggling, but because there was always a plan to perhaps move somebody on and go for a different manager because I think that's the right person for the next stage. I'd be sorely disappointed in the club if they were to react to some of this negativity and pull the trigger on Le Bris at the moment, because the club for a while now, we've congratulated them for kind of blotting out that noise almost and sticking to the long-term visions and not being so reactionary. I'd be devastated if we went back to an attitude and an era where the chairman or those at the top hear a bit of disgruntlement and just start hiring and firing again. Because we've seen in the past that is not the way to go. So yeah, again, there's issues with the team at the moment that could that could be improved on. Le Bris isn't thick. He'll know that. They'll be working on these things this week. They'll be trying to get things right as part of an ongoing journey. Nothing about the way he's done things has me thinking he should go at the moment. The side issue to that is, yes, the club might have a different vision and want to do things differently. That would be understandable given the way Sunderland have done things of late. But no, there should be no need for any of this bomb him out now. And I think it's, from what I can see, it's quite telling that the players all seem to be backing him. There's no stupid stories about the players. You know, he's lost the dressing room. There's no issues about other players not carrying out his instructions. Internally, the coaching staff and the players all seem to be on the same page. And I wonder if one or two of them are just looking at each other going, what's all this about? We've lost a couple of Premier League games and people are now wanting us to rip everything up. So, yes, there's two issues. Things might change, but for me, I wouldn't want to be seeing any knee-jerk decisions as to Le Bris's future.
And from Le Bris's point of view, if you were to put that question to him, or he was going to be asked about that, right? And you know, there's obviously conversations will happen in the club, behind the scenes with the coaching staff, all that sort of stuff. He could rightly say, well, what do you expect us to do? I've got Robin Roofs out injured, Mukiele, Reynaldo, Traore, Lefebvre, Tarby, Angulo. You can go on and on and on. There's Romain Mundle's out. He could quite rightly go, well, if you expect me to keep that level of performance, that level of results, you need to get us a deeper squad. You need to get us better players in the squad to give us more chance to rotate. Mm-hmm. You know, we knew the African Cup of Nations was coming up. We bought a load of players, and we probably got some of them because the AFCON was coming up. But during that period, we were forced to, play Xhaka until he burned out pretty much, and a number of other players had to play. And we're coming out of the back of that period, and everyone thought, it's all right, we've got the AFCON lads back. They've come back off a busy tournament. The players who remained played, and a lot of them hadn't played a great deal of football. People like Dennis Cirk and stuff like that. Geertruida hadn't played much. And he could rightly turn around and say, well, you haven't given us a squad to maintain that level of performance over 30 games. You haven't given us that squad to maintain and cope with a number of injuries over 38 games. So there's an awful lot of, I guess, caveats, isn't it, to the performance that we're seeing at the minute that Le Bris is able to produce with that squad.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree with that. I really do. I mean, you're right. I mean, you've took the captain out for, well, Jack was about a month, wasn't it, where he didn't play. It was at least 3 games, wasn't it? And so, that, I mean, he was a big miss because you look at him, he's our leader and everything like that. And even with Saturday, you're thinking, we've just got, it's going to be out because we've got a couple of players back. And then Lefebvre, I mean, he must have been devastated. Lefebvre missed out because, I mean, we're on about like Enzo the other week, weren't we? Where his longevity seems, he seems to be a naturally fit person who doesn't really get injured, and then he's missed out Brighton, obviously with what we think just a knock, but hopefully he's back for Newcastle. But and then Angulo, who's never been injured in his professional career, and he's out for 4 to 6 weeks, and it's like, oh, you know what I mean? And I mean, his heart must have sunk when Ballard went down as well. But Ballard's another one who's, he's played a hell of a lot of football. Him and Aldrete as well played so much football that it was going to happen, especially with Ballard. It was going to happen. But you're right. You're right. I mean, and that's what I think we need to look at. Certainly with Red. I think that there is a question, and the question the lad asked before is it where I think he's come too far, took us too far or whatever, and is it something where they have got someone in mind? That's a question for the summer. We'll ask that question in the summer. We don't need to ask that question in March, I don't think. You know what I mean? And if they've got someone in mind, and because you've got to remember, be a different director of football now with Shelfie having it now. Has he got someone in mind? Possibly. But for me, it's a non-starter. I don't think we should be replacing Regis now. You're going to be looking at, you mentioned footballers there before, Martin. You mentioned about would players want to come here, seeing that atmosphere, this, that, and the other. Would any manager, when they look at that, Sunderland have just sacked somebody who got them promoted last year, who's got them to 40 points this season, who were unbeaten at home until February, and have sacked somebody, what manager's going to go, well, what the hell am I going to do to improve that? So it's like, well, but then you look at when he's saying we want to win the league, and it's like, right, okay. So, yeah, for me, it's ask the questions in the summer. If it is something like that, where I think, right, we've got someone in mind that we think can take us to the next level, I think we're all going to say, well, he's done a phenomenal job, but we trust the club. And we've said that. And the club have proven so far that they can be very, very ruthless, especially this season. You look at you look at who's gone, the players who have gone, and the staff that's gone as well. They will not, if they think it will help, then they'll do it. And I think in the summer, right, he's done a brilliant job. We'll wish him well. If they've said, right, that's fair enough, I've just got to trust the club on it. Would I agree with it? Completely no, because I think he has got a lot of credit in the bank, and I really do think with a full squad, with depth, he could be that lad to take us there. We thought that this season when we were riding high, 4th in the table. So, and it's no coincidence that our drop off in form is because of these injuries. You look at we mentioned Jack we can mention Jack as the Cowboys going on, but you look at Lodi Mukiele. What a footballer he is. Every team's going to miss him. Every team, because I think he could play in the Champions League. I really do. He's not had a first choice. Yeah. He's not had any left back for a month. we've had Ronaldo out injured and we've had Serpent out injured. So, Trey Humes had to go there. Luke O'Nien's had to go there. We've had players who've had to do a job there. That isn't their natural position. We haven't got a natural player there. So, we've got one, if not both, from back for Saturday. So that'll give us more balance already on Saturday. Hopefully he's got Enzo back, which will give us more creativity. So, it's and when I mentioned Bobby's been out, hasn't he? And you look what Bobby does to us. He was so strong, he can hold the defenders off and everything like that. And the other two can't do that yet because one doesn't. It's not Wilson's game, and my end is still learning. So, yeah, it's just for me. Just let that conversation happen in the summer, and whatever the club does, the club will do. Let's not just go, well, get rid of him now, because it just doesn't make any sense.
I suspect that regardless of whether Le Bris is employed by Sunderland in the summer or not, he will be a wanted man. Clubs from across Europe will have looked at what he's done and looked at it with a little bit of a step back. So you when you're looking at it from the outside, and we all look at other clubs from the outside, right, and go, oh well, this manager's done a great job. This manager's done a great job. This player looks good, and that's a bigger picture view of things because you're not embroiled in day to day. You're not seeing game by game and making judgments and going on that roller coaster. You're seeing it with a lot more consideration, a lot more of a bigger picture view. And people will see the fact that Le Bris has come in, got us promoted the first time Vascan, proven himself very tactically adept, proven himself to be able to handle big names like Xhaka and Reinildo and other people who've come into the club, get everybody playing well and as a squad. And those go, he's had 11 or 12 players out injured, and he still managed to get them pretty much a point a game over that spell. He's done a bloody good job. And I think if we were talking about the Leeds manager who got Leeds into a similar situation, or the Burnley manager who got Burnley into a similar situation, you'd be looking at going, they're absolutely nuts to even think about getting rid of him. They were only in League One 4 or 5 seasons ago. And it's that perspective to see the bigger picture of stuff going on. That doesn't mean to say that there's not things to talk about with squad depth. I think with the injuries that we've had and the suspensions that we've had, it has brought to light maybe the lack of depth in the squad. And that's not it isn't Le Bris's domain, is it? He deals with the players who the club bring in. But on email, Phil has asked, notwithstanding some key injuries and suspensions on the day, Saturday highlighted a core question of how many of our squad could be expected to join another Premier League squad and challenge for game time. Is squad depth quantity or quality? What stood out was that we are operating with non-Premiership strikers as soon as Brian Brobby isn't in the starting 11. Without digging anybody out and solely applying calculated logic, I can't think of any other Premiership squad that would have Wilson Isdor and Eliza Mayenda regularly in their matchday squads. Can you? And Andrew, I think that it is a legitimate question, even with the amount of injuries that we've got. If you looked at our bench on Saturday, Le Bris couldn't really do a great deal. He had, 5 players who'd never played Premier League football for us, or 6 players who'd never played Premier League football for us on the bench. He had Isidore, who he admitted after the game wasn't even fit enough to come on, which baffled me. That's a whole other matter altogether. But in terms of that squad depth, it's a really difficult balance, isn't it? Especially for a club who's coming into the Premier League after, 9 seasons out. Because when everyone's fit, we've got a good 20 players to pick from who could all legitimately stake a claim to be in the first 11, or certainly on the bench. Once you've got a few injuries, you're scraping the barrel a bit, aren't you? And I think there is a question about certainly Wilson Isdor and whether he can really step up consistently, be a Premier League striker. Eliza Mayenda, I think, has got a boatload of potential. I think he's going to be one who is ready to do that in 2 or 3 years' time, and we need to bring him on that journey with us. But it is it, I'll put the question to you, Andrew, is it a problem at the minute? Is this something that we should have dealt with and prepared better for in the summer? Or is this just a natural thing that's been highlighted unfairly by the number of injuries that we've got? But for a first season in the Premier League, is our squad depth actually all right? Are you happy with it?
I am happy with the squad depth. I just think we are in a position where we've gone beyond your usual amount of expected absences, and we're getting hit all the time. Like, like Ant was saying there. The Enzo Lefebvre news just came from nowhere. And then during the game, Ballard's down. It seems every time I think about Sunderland, every time I look at Sunderland, we've got another player injured at the moment. The strikers in particular, because that's where that question focused on. I think Mayenda could very easily do a job at a lot of clubs in the Premier League. I think a lot of clubs would love to have somebody of his potential. Isidore, yeah, there's something happening there. He's obviously not going through a phase of good form at the moment. We'll put it like that. You know, there's all sorts of questions over Isidore's fitness now and this, that, and the other. But we were led to believe in January that Everton was strongly keen on him. So there's another established Premier League team who felt he could do them a job. So it's not like we've got a couple of absolute wastes of space in his backup who nobody else would touch with a barge pole. Yes, they're not as at the level of Broby, but I can't think of many squads where they've got 3 or 4 top quality centre forwards all there ready to go. It's one of the hardest positions in the league to source. And yeah, how many quality strikers are there? I don't think in terms of goal scorers this season, I think behind Haaland and the lad at Brentford, I don't even think there's many players who are in double figures at the moment. I could be a little bit behind on that. So I think in that wider context, I don't think Sunderland's options are too bad at all. As you two gents are talking, as I'm talking there, and you made the comparison with Burnley and Leeds, Sunderland is a mad club. We just, the level of expectation and the level of interest and passion which leads to a lot of that expectation. It is a loud, busy club where loads of things are happening and everyone has an opinion. There's very few supporters are passive at Sunderland. There's very few supporters go to the game, enjoy the Saturday afternoon, and that's it. There's all, it consumes everybody's thoughts, which is just as well seen as we're doing a pod about people's questions. And if I may, AFCON's been dropped in there. We've spoken about AFCON already. Prior to AFCON, it was a massive talking point. Haway The Podcast did individual pods about it. Local press did bits about it. It was in the national press. How was Sunderland going to cope with AFCON? This is this massive hurdle coming up in the coming weeks. How are they going to deal with it? And across the supporter base, there was an allowance or an understanding that results might drop. And yet, as I see it now, our injury list is more severe. The number of absences we've got and the players who are missing and the positions they're missing in, like left back, full backs are a massive part of the game now, and we haven't had a natural left back for ages. But there doesn't seem to be that level of tolerance to results slipping. So I don't know why people were okay with the potential in December when everybody was on international duty, but people don't have the same patience now when we're missing 5 or 6 of our best players, and 1 or 2 aren't missing, 1 or 2 are back, but are clearly lacking sharpness. So that does, I do think some people need to just remember how bad the injury list is at the moment. And in terms of squad strength, of course, over the summer, I want us to improve on it. But for a newly promoted Premier League team, I think our depth is more than good enough for the day-to-day type of situation. We're just now having to handle something that's bigger than that and beyond that. I doubt any club in the Premier League could cope with having up to 6 players as influential as what we're missing. I don't think any club would be able to just pick up that issue and continue without there being a drop off in performances.
No, I completely agree with you. And just to throw one at you, just before we wrap up today's Q&A pod, we've got a couple of questions here. Stephen Hubber has asked, what's behind the noticeable drop-off in form and what progress are we making towards signing a proven striker? I think he's obviously got us mistaken with Florent Gisolfi there for the second part of that question, but I think the noticeable drop-off in form is purely injuries as far as I'm concerned. I think that can be explained. We've talked so much today so far about the injuries and how that's impacting things and the number of games that players have played without being able to have a bit of a rest. And I just think that kind of sums that bit up. But Joe Lewins asks, Saturday's game showed that small margin swing games. We clearly need more depth, as the bench yesterday was threadbare to say the least. Should we look to get more experience from players or stick to potential? Should we let the recurring injury players like Traore, Cirkin and Mundell go? And there's a couple of bits there. I just want to pick up on that small margin swing games. And this is something I talked about yesterday on the pod with Chris and Jason Jones from the Echo. Like, if that goal from Rig isn't offside, we go on to win that game 1-2-0. Everything's happy. Everything's wonderful. We haven't got half the questions that we've got for the podcast because everyone's happy with that. And it was such a small moment. It's been like that for a lot of games this season. And you kind of just got to ride that bit out sometimes. The second bit of his question, in terms of getting more experience into the playing group and whether there's a problem, I guess, with those players who seem to pick up recurring injuries. So I guess there's one thing, having that squad depth, right? But if you're carrying players within that squad, like Dennis Cirkin, who, over his time at the club has suffered with recurrent injuries, Romain Mundell is part of that squad. Through his time at the club, he's suffered from recurring injuries. Do we have to be a little bit ruthless in terms of some of those injury records in the summer and kind of go, look, if you can't give us pretty much nailed on full season, then we can't have you as part of the squad?
You know what? I think that's what the may do. Just go off the first question. He said, what's with the drop of form? Injuries, simple as. Injuries in players who played so much, they are now knackered, like they are, and that's what happens. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that those three you mentioned there, Traore, Cirkin, and Mundell, I think will probably leave in the summer. I can't see them exercising the option for Traore's contract when he's missed pretty much every game since he's come back from the Cup of Nations. He was back for a cup of tea, wasn't he, and then got injured again, bless him, which it's harsh because I actually think he's done really, really well. I'm really, really disappointed that he's injured because I think he gives us something that the rest of the wingers don't, and that is, it is that experience as well, and I think they may look at doing that. Mundell, I think will leave in the summer as much as I think it'll be really sour, to leave on that note. I think he will, and Cirkin, I can't see them renewing a contract for a lad who's more injured than not, and again, it's disappointing because with Dennis Cirkin, there's a top quality left back in there. If he stays fit for a season, he'd be unbelievable. And it'd be sod's law. We'd let him go and he'll be injury free. But I think it was like Nathan Broadhead, wasn't it? We had Nathan Broadhead and he was not been injured since. But that's for a question for another day. But no, I think that's a good point to bring in some players in the summer who are a little bit, who are got a little bit of a better injury record. That does make sense. It's what they've tried to do. I mean, obviously, as I mentioned, Angulo was never injured in his professional career. Yes, it's a young professional career, never injured. He's pulled up, and he's got out for 4 to 6 weeks. It's obviously a muscle injury, but it's not good. It's not that. But like I say, it would have been unfortunate. I mean, who loses a goalkeeper for 3 weeks? Not many teams, Goalkeepers are normally really stout. I bet Roof says, but he just hurt himself making a save, didn't he? So. We'll end on a positive note. They'll all be back soon. We'll all be fine.
Let's keep our fingers crossed. Well, I think we will wrap it up there, gents. So thank you very much, Ant. Always a pleasure.
Cheers, mate.
And thank you as always, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
And I think it's really important to point out some of the conversation in the first half of the pod. It's difficult to have, isn't it? All of us as supporters, collectively, we just want to see the club do well. We want to see the team do well. We want to see the club do well. And we can help the players, and that's the bottom line. We can help the players get through sticky patches. But I think it's a really important thing to talk about and address. And we all genuinely approach this from wanting the best for the club, wanting the best for the team. And I think we all have a part to play in helping that team be as successful as possible. We will be back tomorrow with another Q&A. We've got tons of questions that we haven't got through today, so we'll be back tomorrow and we will see you then.
Find the biggest voices in sports on the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Like The Joy of Football, with me, football commentator Martin Tyler, and me, Neil Barnett, who worked inside a football club for over 30 years. We've talked football all our lives, down the pub, in the restaurants, in the stadia. Now we're doing it on the podcast. And that includes my weekly letter from the gantry. Search The Joy of Football and listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Sports Social Podcast Network.